We're ready to go. Kia ora koutou everyone. He tino mahana ki tēnei hui, nā mi kia koutou katoa. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. A warm welcome to everyone at our last official council meeting of this term. Before we start, I'm going to ask Councillor Wilson to open with a karakia or some words of wisdom.
Thank you, Worship. It seems strange calling you Your Worship after so many years, Councillor Stoltz. But anyway, it's refreshing and I enjoy seeing your smiley face there. But I'll make a different greeting. Dobry den, yaksamash. Okay, it's interesting at this time in the midst of the election campaign, I seem to be getting more phone calls than I ever have before and had some great discussions. Ironic in a way, because I have to tell the person after a decent amount of discussion that I'm not actually standing in this election. But one of the things that's come through is that most of the callers are very misunderstanding about what council's doing and what they've got planned for the future. So I thought I would give you a little story and then a bit of a challenge at the end. Okay, the story actually moves us back in time. Any student of classical history will have probably read an author called Thucydides, who wrote in ancient Athens times. Now, he wrote of the time with a war between Sparta and Athens, the two powers of the time, called the Peloponnesian War. And it lasted for 27 years and it was devastating for that region. The two powers were very different. Sparta was a military country, very much aligned along military structure, whereas Athens had the germ of a democracy. And I'll take you to parts of a speech by the leader of the time, Pericles, in the year 430 BC. And he was talking at a funeral, praising the soldiers that had died. And the part that I'm getting to is he illuminated why those soldiers willingly went into battle, followed orders and so on. And it was because he believed that it was the state of their country, the democracy that they had, where they were more open, understanding, tolerant to ideas than other nations of the time. And he particularly pointed out the fact that they all supported their city-state because they had a voice amongst those that were making decisions that affected them. And I take from that the voice that he was talking about that they had was actually not consultation, but was engagement. And that's what a Greek democracy was. And so I'm saying to you that that's an important part of our community, is engaging with the community. I don't like the word so much consultation. It seems more like a box-ticking exercise, but engagement, and I think it's very pertinent today. Council is a very complex business, and the trick of it is, and I know you're all willing to engage with your community, the trick of it is how to do it. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Where's our order of the day? So we're going to move on to our apologies. I've got an apology from Councillor Finn. Moved by Councillor Akwata Brown, seconded by Councillor Seymour. All in favour, contrary carried. Any declarations of interest? If not, I'll take you to page 5. Moved by Councillor Burdett, seconded by Councillor Seymour. That's the confirmation of the extraordinary council minutes of 8 August. All in favour, contrary carried. I take you to page 8. Moved by Councillor Burdett, seconded by Councillor McLean. All in favour, contrary carried. Any comments on the minutes? If not, I'll move you to page 19, the confirmation of the public excluded minutes of the meeting on 22 August. Moved by Councillor Burdett, seconded by Councillor Foster. All in favour, contrary carried. We've got no leave of absence, acknowledgements and tributes. We are going to move into our public deputations now, and I would love to welcome Kathy Sheldrake and Kathy Hayes to talk to us about freedom camping, and we have a paper later. Please take a seat.
Okay, good morning. We've come here as very concerned Gisborne citizens and ratepayers to discuss how we feel that you should vote on the, when you come to your discussion today about the issue of freedom camping at the Marina Car Park. Okay, so what we are asking for you is to vote for option C, the temporary closure using section 9 of the council's freedom camping bylaw. And I understand that they'll be looking at the issue of access. We also feel that there's some issues of health and safety in terms of the water quality of the river concerned, and the emotional safety of health and safety of our local residents. So as residents and ratepayers and regular users of the Marina Car Park for water sports, we beseech you as our council to vote for option C when you consider options for management of the Marina Car Park Freedom Camping Area. Why should you vote for option C? Okay, it is not an appropriate venue for freedom camping. It is adjacent to the Rose Gardens, the Lawsonfield Theatre, and a fine dining restaurant. It is a prime inner city location enjoyed by locals and visitors as a sporting, recreational, dining and relaxation area. It is often overcrowded with large camper vans and many people staying in cars. There's a lot of inappropriate behaviour by freedom campers, which is offensive to the Gisborne residents. What are some of the issues that we have noticed at the Marina Car Park? There's often people washing dishes at the ramp with food waste and detergent running into the river. We have seen people washing dishes in the toilet hand basins. There is now a sign up about that, but if people can't read English, then in Māori, perhaps they won't know what it means. There is showering at the ramp with soap and often people in underwear. We have quite often seem to be some young foreign males that think it's funny to shower in an exhibitionist manner at the ramp, and there are a lot of young people paddling and using that area regularly, and it is extremely offensive. There are washing lines hung between trees, and that has been an issue again very recently. There are people sleeping in tents. There are people camping all day long at the riverside there with their chairs and their tables. It restricts access to the river frontage for other visitors who in the past would have used that area for sitting and camping. And in the past, there has been an issue of lack of enforcement, although I realise that should be improved with the new funding that is becoming available. How do we compare with what other councils are doing? I've done a lot of research about other councils around the country, and at the Marina Car Park, it is possible for up to 25 non-self-contained vehicles to camp continuously for 3 days. This happens nowhere else in New Zealand. And it's a prime inner city location. And Tasman recently reviewed their bylaw, and they prohibited quite a few areas based on these issues of antisocial behaviour, congestion, health and safety of other visitors, inadequate facilities and protection of access. And we feel that all of those issues are issues at the marina as well. And what are other councils doing? So we researched freedom camping in, in Auckland, Coromandel, Bay of Plenty, Hawke's Bay, Tasman, Canterbury and Southland. And some of the common themes that they have come up with to manage freedom camping: it is prohibited in urban areas. Very few places around New Zealand have any urban area camping spots, a few small ones, but not many. There are numerous small spot sites for a small number of vehicles, which range in number from 2 to 10, not the 25 that we have at our Marina Car Park. Many of them are self-contained vehicles only. The Coromandel area, none of their freedom camping sites are anything except self-contained vehicles. Many of them have restricted summer hours, and so they actually close those freedom camping spots from December to February. And many of them are overnight parking only, and so visitors come in by something like 6 and must be gone by 8 or 9 in the morning. Now, where to for Gisborne? Okay, the changes need to be in place before this summer. We feel it's gone on for long enough, and we really do ask that you vote with some common sense on this. So by voting for option C, you will allow this area to be returned to Gisborne, the people of Gisborne, for this summer, for their enjoyment and their use, without feeling harassed by the presence of numerous vehicles in there. And what this will do is give the new council next year time to actually review the bylaw. Our bylaw is due for review by 2021, must be reviewed every 5 years. So it gives time to come up with a plan that fits the needs of the locals and also the ratepayers, and the campers as well. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thanks, Kathy. Thanks. Councillors, any questions? This paper is first on our agenda, so we will debate it later. But if there are any questions you have to clarify this public deputation, now's your time. If not, I invite you guys to stay. It's first on our agenda. We're just going to talk to our climate emergency kids first, and then we will. So I invite our students up to the front to come and hand over petitions. So I invite all councillors tomorrow. Kids are going to come and talk to us tomorrow about their concerns about the climate. So I invite everyone that wants to join us tomorrow. You will be at council tomorrow at 1:30.
Yes, we will be.
So you can sit or stand, whatever suits you.
We'll stand, thanks.
Okay.
We'd just like to clarify, we're not presenting our petition today.
Good.
Today we are presenting our demands of the council to you.
Good. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Oh,
So I'm Elena,
and I'm Maya, and we are the organisers of Gisborne's Strike for Climate, which, as Rhiat said, is happening tomorrow. We're doing a sit-in outside the council. So tomorrow, Gisborne youth are striking from school for the 3rd time to demand climate action. When we strike from school tomorrow, we do so with people all over New Zealand and the world, participating in a global call for action from the world's leaders and from the New Zealand government.
this time the strike for climate is intergenerational. Adults are joining us too. The Gisborne Volunteer Centre, Hikurangi Cannabis Company, Eastland Community Trust, and Eastland Group are all closing their doors, and staff are coming to join the strike.
We have national demands of the New Zealand government, asking them to do everything in their power to limit warming to 1.5 degrees. But locally, we are striking for action from you, our local council. And this is why.
The way we have been operating for decades has been with the purpose of short-term economic growth rather than long-term sustainability. We cannot keep operating like this. We must change in the face of the climate crisis.
World Bank has estimated that over 100 million people will fall into poverty in the next 10 years because of climate change. UNICEF estimates that in the next decade, climate change is going to affect about 175 million children each year around the world.
New Zealand's gross greenhouse emissions increased 19.6% from 1990 to 2016. New Zealand's share of the global greenhouse emissions is small, but our gross emissions per person is high. Just because we're a small nation and New Zealand is a small city does not mean we do not have a role to play in this climate crisis.
The economic cost of climate change for Gisborne will be huge. For individuals, for horticulture and agriculture, forestries, fisheries, tourism, and the health of our people. It will affect every aspect of our region. Increased floods and droughts will have huge costs for our local businesses and growers, let alone property owners. Sea levels are projected to rise 26 to 77 centimetres in the next 50 years if we limit warming to 1.5 degrees. This is enough to seriously affect Gisborne's coastline, low-lying properties, horticulture and agriculture lands. The The poorest and youngest in our community will be affected the most by disease, extreme weather conditions, and strain put on food production.
Our production of emissions is increasing. We need to curb emissions to keep global warming below 1.5 degrees. But at the current rate, we're nowhere near this target. The consequences of stream flooding hitting an unprepared region were seen in Tolaga Bay last year. Climate change will only increase extreme weather events such as this, hitting us more frequently and with more intensity. And we will be the ones dealing with these effects.
And these are the effects with only 1.5 degrees of global warming, what we are trying to limit our emissions to. 2 degrees of warming has consequences that are far, far worse for everyone. We are striking because these are the consequences of your inaction, and they are falling on us. This is our home, and we have a responsibility to protect it.
We cannot stand see people suffering when we're in a privileged position to act. We must take action immediately. Tomorrow, when we strike, these will be our demands of you, the Gisborne District Council.
We demand that you do everything in your power to limit warming to 1.5 degrees to safeguard our right to a future on Earth.
1. We demand that the Gisborne District Council declare climate emergency in response to our petition, which has upwards of 500 signatures. The Gisborne community is behind us in this kaupapa, but we will not be presenting this petition today. A climate emergency declaration must acknowledge the magnitude of the climate crisis and will set the narrative for the urgent pace at which we need to act on climate change, but must uphold democratic values and obligations under the Te Tiriti o Waitangi.
2. The Gisborne District Council needs to put climate change mitigation and adaptation at the centre of all planning, development, and council operations.
3. We demand that the Gisborne District Council put in place comprehensive adaptation plans to safeguard the Tairāwhiti region against the effects of climate change in both short and long term, and construct these plans with consultation and input from the youth and tangata whenua. This will mean the council can prepare for these consequences and take better action to lower our region's greenhouse emissions in order to mitigate them.
4. We demand the Gisborne District Council begin building community and ecosystem resilience now through regenerating the natural environment in Tairāwhiti, investing in local climate change education and projects, and developing more connected, smart, and sustainable city design, including, but not limited to, making sustainable transport a safer and more appealing mode of transport for the Gisborne public.
The Gisborne District Councils should be putting pressure on other councils throughout New Zealand and the central government through leading climate action in Tairāwhiti and acknowledging the urgency of the climate crisis.
Tomorrow, we will strike for our futures. We hope you will take these demands with the seriousness they deserve and act before it is too late. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, councillors, any questions? Councillor Seymour.
Thank you very much for that presentation. Can I, in respect to council considering adaptation, have you asked any council officers whether or not it's something that we consider in our planning and policy now? Have you had a conversation with any council officers?
We
No.
have had extended conversations with many of the people around this table around climate change.
No, I
We
didn't
haven't
mean
had
round
direct
this table.
Conversations with you, for example, or with other people around this table about specifically climate change adaptation plans. But you can be assured that we have read up on currently what you have discussed in your meetings and what you have put in place so far. And we are satisfied that this is lackluster and it needs more strength and it needs more urgency because the crisis demands it.
Thank you.
Any more questions? If not, I invite all councillors to join us tomorrow. 12 o'clock, you will start your march at Childers Road, and it will be at Council 1:30, and we will have a discussion. We'll talk, have questions, question time. So I invite everyone to join us tomorrow. Hey, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. We'll see you tomorrow. We can only be here at 1:30. I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you, guys. Thanks a lot. Same to you. Okay, we're going to move on to our agenda. If I can take everyone to page 30, it is our Freedom Camping options for management of the Marina car park. The floor is open for discussion.
Sorry, Madam Chair, you've skipped over the action points, and I want to ask some questions. about
Let's go back.
Page 23.
That's true. So let's go to the action sheet on page 23, please. Any discussions around our action sheet, page 21?
Yes, thank you,
Councillor Seymour.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mayor. I just want to raise the matter of the carvings that were in the previous council chamber. It's the last item on page 23. We had a resolution that the carvings would come back into this council chamber, and I see that it says here that they are too large. And my understanding, at least a year ago, we were having a discussion with the carvers. I'm not sure whether they were too large, because in actual fact, they weren't as tall as that blank piece of building. But it was, I understood, that they were heavier than the roofing structure. So it bothers me that we have a resolution on our books that says they were coming back into this council chamber, and now we're looking at where else they might be. So, and this report of a conversation has been going on for goodness, no date across that page, of 13th of February 19. But it's, I mean, the resolution was some time before that this council resolved the Queen, the council crest and the carvings would return to this council chamber. So I just want to note my concern that it's still seemingly being procrastinated about. And I'd like to know what can be done about seeing that at least one of them, because if you recall, there were a pair and that one was on either end of the council chamber. And I just think we need to respect the heritage that they represented. Over the page, there's the, I just would like to be provided, and it doesn't have to be right now, but it can be by email on 005, the dates for the call over, which I understand is coming up soon with regard to the Tolaga Bay floods. And again, advice on how that $2 million available for the Tolaga Bay beach cleanup would be utilised. And that still says progressing. So
There's an answer for that?
Yes, through your worship. So just, we'll have to come back to you on 003, both Penny and Wilson are not here to respond
I
to
know,
you.
but we really need to keep it in front of us.
005, in terms of that second one, I think that needed to be updated because we never got, for the $2 million beach cleanup. That was a slight error, I think, because we put forward that we had grant funding for $2 million that we were trying to go for. So that actually is not an action point, which I'd noted here to just raise that it shouldn't be there.
So it shouldn't be there. If it's
No,
not.
because there was no $2 million given for the cleanup. So
And is there an October date, I understand, for the next?
yes, so the sentencing for Ada 2 was going to be on this of October, I believe, but that's now been postponed to the 22nd, thereabouts of November.
But there's still 6 companies that have not been before the court yet.
That's right. So there are 2 others that are, so they're being handed over to Crown Law because they've elected to go trial by jury. So there was a discussion that was held, I think it was last week, around that. But I can give you a bit more of the update around what's happening with the other 6.
Could we please, through your worship, could we have an email just with, we don't need detail, I mean, we do need just detail of dates and just some updated information since we won't be having another council meeting for a while. Thank you.
Good. Any other discussions around the action sheet? Councillor Dowsing.
Thank you. Just on the restoration of Tuamotu Island on page 22, action point 9. It's been on our books for 6 years. Can we either get rid of it or do it?
Yes, through your worship, that was another one. I think actually we can remove that. So the action was taken. There has been a visit to the island, and so that the intention of Ngāti Onioni is to see that being brought into the co-management relationship. So we're working through that. So we've actually got it as part of the work program now, so it can come out of the actions.
But the point was, though, that councillors were to be invited at the same time, and obviously that didn't happen. But that was the point, because we were asked if we were interested.
Okay, if there are no other discussions around our action sheet, I take you to our first report, page 30, options for management of the Marina Car Park Freedom Camping. And we have an extensive report in front of us. So Councillor Wilson and then Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Your Worship. I stand to move recommendation 1 and 2B. Now, I do, sorry, thank you. I do so because actually it was a good presentation from the people this morning, and they were reinforcing exactly how I feel. I've never been comfortable with having freedom camping across the river from the CBD. Hang, come on here. Is
Just to
that camping?
clarify, you're moving B, but just for the audience, it is option C.
Yeah.
B in
It
our
is.
report is option C. Yeah, but it is B.
But
It's
it's
2B,
1,
but it is
2B,
option C.
which is C.
Yeah,
Okay, it is, so it is temporary closure, while amendment to the bylaw is worked on. Yeah, look, I just don't think it is appropriate that we have camping across the river from the CBD with people viewing washing hanging out and all the rest of it. And I'm not going to go through all the details that the presentation gave this morning, except to say, look, camping, I believe, should be reserved for areas that are more appropriate, like on the coastline, in maybe parks next to rivers, those sorts of things. And that's what true camping is. We shouldn't be providing just a cheap option for people to stay overnight, because in fact, that's what it has got really down to. People are sleeping in cars and vans that aren't self-contained in any way, and are just getting a cheap night. So we should be consider our area more valuable than that our area that we try to keep nice and tidy and so on, that we do have some rules, we do have a little bit of discipline around the place. The Marina Park is a very important and iconic part to our region, to all groups of people, various community groups, and I think that this would at least for the next season give us a chance to look at that bylaw, because we'll have to go out to consult again. So it wouldn't be a given that will end up a permanent closure as a freedom bylaw, freedom camping area. So, but at least it'll do it for this summer. Thanks.
thank you. Councillor Foster, Dowsing.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, no, I totally agree. I won't get up and stand on. Do we need
No,
to
it's
stand?
only Brian standing at his last meeting.
Yeah.
I'm loving it. I wanted to comment.
You actually beat me to it, because I was quite happy to move this as well. And congratulations to the two Cathys for the presentation.
Thank
You know, freedom camping is not going away. It's getting huge. It's I promoted Kaiti Beach as a freedom camping area, and I'm starting to have doubts because of the consequences that's even happening around there. I came to Gisborne as a freedom camper years ago, so I don't want to contradict myself too much, but no, the whole freedom camping thing, I guess it's happening around the country, is changing rapidly. The consequences of what we do here at Marina, which I totally applaud, I see it every day I go there, it's just not a good look at all. But the consequences is that Kaiti Beach is going to be inundated more, and also Makarori, which is our only two other freedom camping areas. We need to review our bylaw as soon as possible, and we need to make up some other options and some other areas that are applicable to this activity. The activity is changing rapidly. There's a lot of homeless now sleeping in cars every night. So the whole environment of freedom camping is moving all the time, and it is a cheap option for people to camp and stay somewhere. And the consequences, I mean, I Kaiti Beach, even behind the boat sheds, the smell is terrible, absolutely terrible. And I can see what's going to happen as we put more portaloos and showers at Kaiti Beach. That place is going to be inundated, and we actually just beautified the whole area to make it more public friendly. And this other activity could be consequential to what we're trying to achieve, actually. So I would like to see that we have a facility that we can extend this after the daylight saving next year to prohibit camping at Marina Car Park permanently. And also, I think that we should be looking at how we can facilitate other areas with our new freedom camping bylaw. So we've got a lot of work to do, and I want to see it happening as soon as possible.
Thank you, councillor Dowsing, then councillor Akawata-Brown, then councillor McLean.
Thank you. I think this sets our intention going forward. I'm in support also. And it's not around a lack of desire for freedom camping. It's a desire to ensure that the areas that we choose do not have conflicting user groups. And that is far too difficult an area to have that, to have freedom camping. I also think it indicates that in the future, we need to determine our capacity or our desire for capacity in sites and set a higher level of expectation for the campers and the actions that are undertaken in those areas. We cannot monitor a site that is overused. So by setting those capacity limits, we can also ensure that those who are there are behaving appropriately. It's our region. And we should set the standard that we expect our visitors to behave in. Thank you.
Mine's a question, kia ora to you both, and thank you for the report. This issue highlights obviously a nationwide issue around homelessness, vagrants, and obviously concerns about lifestyles of people, as well as those who come and work here in our horticultural space, etc. So do we collate that data enough to be able to feed forward to central government that our region is now becoming inundated with those who are mistreating, something that we've all valued all our lives, that the freedom to camp and spaces, etc. So are we able to feed forward that we are now seeing an extra issue on top of what was originally intended for good, and now we're seeing poverty-related issues, or etc., etc. So is that data going forward to anyone in particular, or is that we're going to manage this way because we set the best fit for our region?
To the chair, there is no active monitoring on transient habitants really, in the entire Gisborne region. I understand Manaaki Tairāwhiti has a particular focus, but it's a difficult and complex issue to even identify what qualifies as. So it's a wider response that's probably required. So while there are observations in this context, this really is around freedom camping as opposed to addressing that wider issue.
Councillor McLean, and then Councillor Cranston, and then Wharehinga, and then Dunn. Everyone wants to say something today.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I support the presentation we've just had. And I've said it previously, that marina is the window to our CBD, and I've monitored that towards the end of last season, and it's shambolic. And looking at going ahead and trying to futurise our whole area, I mean, this is just detracting from it totally. So I support a temporary closure till we get it home and host. And I'd like to ask or mention about to Larry. I mean, a few years ago when you came here as a freedom camper, Larry, I wonder if you'd say the same things as what you say today, just as an interesting point. But no, I support
Thank you. So I'm going to allow one more person that supports it to speak, and then if there's people opposing, then we'll open the floor for people opposed. So Andy and Amber can still speak, and then
Yeah, thanks.
Go on, Josh. Sorry, Josh.
Yeah, also support the recommendation. I'm just worrying about the, well, not worried, I just want clarity around about the powers of enforcement. I've freedom camped in the wrong place in Australia one time many years ago, and 5 a.m. I got a knock on the window and a $200 fine, bang. And I never camped in the wrong place in Australia again. So the powers of the enforcement and the consequences of the enforcement, I'd like some clarity on. Also, a couple of points there where they seem to be quite defensive. I was curious to read number 27, which was kind of the homeless and the seasonal workers. It said something, these individuals may be effective if the marina closes. They actually shouldn't be there. Why should we be worrying about that? And the other one was a consideration of upgrading the facilities, so dishes and clothes washing facilities, and that's I don't know how it got away from that self-contained argument, you know. I mean, if it was all self-contained, we wouldn't have the arguments we're having, but it's got so far away from that now that that's where the problems lie. So, yeah, just what are the enforcement consequences?
So through your worship, the issue with this is that we have a Freedom Camping Act that allows rights of campers, self-contained vehicles to camp in council designated reserves. The issue that we have is that it could be potentially contested. So we've noted that in our report in terms of in terms of number 32 para, which we would find difficult in terms of the actual enforcement. So it's more a deterrence approach until we can actually amend that bylaw. No. And we probably don't want to publicise that.
Okay, thank you for that. Did you want to say something? So Councillor Wharehinga and then Councillor Dunn.
Thank you, Your Worship. I did also want to actually mention the fact that this has come under, this has come across our table because of the Freedom Camping Act. And even if we do go to that space where, or even when we do go to that space where we're challenging in regards to this and looking like that we're going to change this, at least we have kind of proven a fallback position. I did want to ask in the same vein as Councillor Cranston, or actually implore in the same vein as Councillor Cranston in regards to compliance, that we received a bigger chunk of money in regards to enforcement. And I'd really like to implore that we really focus that chunk of money to Makarori in particular, because there's a huge, like Councillor Cranston, Councillor Dowsing had commented, there are various user groups, and there was a very vocal user group in regards to Makarori. So I'd really like to implore that we really focus that new lot of budget that's come in to enforce compliance, particularly around Makarori.
CEO.
Yeah, sorry, through your worship, I just want to circle back again in terms of the enforcement part. The other part about the deterrence, however, is that once you remove the restriction, or once you put in place a restriction for the campers, then that opens up the space for use by the public. So in effect, what we may end up having is that people that are just parking there anyway occupy some of the vehicle spaces too. So that's another aspect that can kind of counter any teeth or lack of around the
Councillor Dunn.
Yes, what I wanted to say is that these issues aren't new. We've known about them for a really, really long time. Unfortunately, our response is just too damn slow. I would just like to acknowledge that we're being very inconsistent in our approach here. We were petitioned one summer or 2 summers ago for the very same thing at the Makarori car park, and this council didn't respond. So now here we are saying we're going to have a temporary closure. I just want to make sure that we are consistent going forward. If Makarori surfers come to us tomorrow and say, it's too busy for all of these same reasons we have here, there's not enough capacity, public safety and environmental impact, are we going to put a temporary closure on that site too? So I just have to raise that we must be consistent here. In my view, it makes way more sense to fast track which is what Councillor Foster and myself had asked for after we heard about Makarori car park, to fast track the review of this Freedom Camping bylaw to get a really consistent approach to how we deal to these kinds of things. I sat on the Freedom Camping bylaw with Councillor Seymour and former Councillor Bald. We do have lots of knowledge and background of this and why cars were allowed in and not self-contained vehicles. So there's a lot of history here. We acknowledge that we haven't got it right. We really do need to go back, not wait till 2021. No. We've got to do this sooner. We've got to get better at this stuff.
Thank you. Councillor Cranston, you wanted to add something?
Just when we were talking about the enforcement, I mean, if someone was caught littering, they'd be covered by the Littering Act, so that as long as the enforcement are aware, there's other ways of doing the enforcement. Yeah.
Okay, councillor Seymour, I think we've said what we want
Madam
to say.
Chair, I completely support what's in front of us today, but I concur with councillor Dunn. And I really do think we need to ensure that we monitor. I don't know, I don't want to get any further into it, but I saw a bit of evasiveness about how strong our monitoring is going to be. If we put in place a control around the bylaw, then we have to make sure that we have the mechanism to stand behind that bylaw. Otherwise, we're not doing our job as a council. I feel really strongly about that. And monitoring needs to apply to all of our freedom camping areas, because while different people with different interests in particular camping areas, then we go to the Waihao Beach one and people tell you how close everyone is to it and how dangerous it is because everyone is jammed so close. So we've been given money for improved monitoring over the summer. We need to make sure that we use it across the district, and we should get on and make sure that people are employed. I note somewhere else in one paper I've read that, a process is being put in place, but we need to get on and make sure that happens and the funds are used for what they were given to us for. But I support the recommendation as the short-term measure.
Great, so the assurance we want from staff is that we will start reviewing our bylaw next year. Early, so that it's in place. Do I see nods or shakes?
So I'm just, so the reason why the timing was in there is our next paper deals with our Tairāwhiti management plan, and as you can see, that's going to be resource intensive. So there are constraints in terms of our capacity to be able to deliver in the time frame if we have to short circuit that.
We've got new money, so we must be able to deliver
enforcement.
For the enforcement.
For
You can't enforce
policy
without
development
monitoring, can you?
engagement, we will have to outsource it and try and find a way to fund that because the team is at capacity in terms of what they can deliver.
Okay, we'll deal with that at another time. We'll deal with what's in front of us now. So I do have a mover in Councillor Wilson and Councillor Foster seconded it. So we, Wharehinga. So we've got number one, move, notes the contents of this report and considers the benefits, risks and implications of temporarily closing the Marina Car Park Freedom Camping Area for the 1920 summer season. And then 2B, we choose option C, temporary closure under the Freedom Camping Bylaw as most appropriate for managing the Marina Car Park Freedom Camping Area for this coming summer. All in favour? Aye. Contrary? Carried. Thank you. And thank you, Kathy and Kathy. Thank you very much. See you. Thanks.
We already have freedom campers out at Puawa who've been there for
Summer
at least a
campers.
week.
Summer campers, yeah.
Summer campers, and the season's not open yet, I don't
Thanks,
think.
guys. We'll
So
see
I
you
don't know what
tomorrow.
your people are doing.
Do they put their tarps out, Pat?
No,
They're
the
there.
buildings are there. They're vans, caravans, mobile homes.
Okay, let's move on to page 40, which is exactly what Nadine spoke about earlier. Our plans need a refresh, and there's a lot of work going in there. Moved by Amber, seconded by Shannon. Any discussion? I think it's quite straightforward. Amber.
Yes, I would, having moved it, I would like to actually amend recommendation 2 where it says required alteration. No, these plans need serious updating and a massive refresh. And the reason I say that is because, being the coastal person, our coastal plan is 23 years old. That is absolutely shocking. That we don't even know whether that's fit for purpose anymore. I know for certain that it does not comply with the New Zealand Coastal Policy Statement, which came out in 2010. So we are way behind the times in some of these planning documents. So I would rather say in recommendation 2, agrees that the Tairāwhiti Resource Management Plan gets updated. Yeah, it needs to be updated, not requires alteration. This is much needed work.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Would I just say is update?
Councillor Foster.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, no, this, I totally agree. We are needing a major shake-up of our Tairāwhiti Resource Management Plan. We amalgamated all the plans over the last few years to make it simplistic, but some of the rules are just so antiquated. And the reason, because of our resource consenting problems, which have been highlighted right throughout our region with developers and people wanting to do business with us, is the frustration of time and everything. And it all boils down to our antiquated plans and the rules that that we enforce on our staff to implement. The rules aren't fit for purpose in a lot of cases, and they totally need an uphaul. So we need to get onto this as soon as possible, because this will help alleviate some of the resource consenting problems we have internally. So I'm really, and I applaud the Mayor with wanting to do this as soon as possible. And, you know, so we need to move on it, really move on it, and as soon as ASAP.
Okay, is there anyone who wants to speak against this today? Okay, last one, Shannon, and then if there are people wanting, I think we'll stick a little bit closer to standing orders today. Yes, Shannon.
Thank you. I think this is important, not just to get rid of the issues that we're seeing where our policy conflicts, but council is an enabler, or should be an enabler for our region. And this is doing the exact opposite. It's the most important, well, we have several most important things on the go at the moment, but for many members of our community, for many processes that we undertake, this cannot be overlooked in terms of its importance. So yeah, I can't wait to get stuck into it.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, look, very briefly, we have done various reviews of this plan before, and supposedly some of the things we're doing this time have been done before. So I worry a little bit that we are going to achieve what we set out to do. But the idea of having a holistic, strategic review of the plan, I think, is really important, to start from basics to see where you want this plan to go. It's not just dealing with a little detail, but having a higher helicopter view of what the plan is trying to achieve and start from there. Because without doing that, and I don't believe it has been done in the last reviews, it's only been dealing with, you know, double ups and wording and all this sort of thing. So I'm hopeful that this plan will come up with a more concise, clear outcome of where it wants to go.
Thank you. Anyone else wants to speak against the motion? So we need to restate the motion because you've changed the words, and then, so the words agrees that the Tairāwhiti Resource Management Plan be updated and that the replacement of the plan will be progressed in stages. Does the seconder agree? Okay, so we have got that in front of us. If there's no other discussion, we move the contents of the report. 1A, take a review of the Tairāwhiti Resource Management Plan provisions has been undertaken in accordance with Section 79 of the Resource Management Act. And 2, agrees that the Tairāwhiti Resource Management Plan be updated and that the replacement of the plan will be progressed in stages. Moved by Councillor Dunn, seconded by Councillor Dowsing. All in favour? Contrary, carried. Thank you, Keita. We move to our paper variations of our roading contract. Councillor Seymour, that's page 53.
Madam Chair, I'm pleased to move the recommendations and just note that the cumulative sum now goes to one roading contractor. It just bothers me a bit, so I'm happy to move, and the sooner we get on and do it, the better. But it really does bother me that we still on item 5 on page 55, we're still talking about $11.5 million of repairs need to be designed, consented and constructed in this financial year. And if they're still waiting to be designed, I'd be just concerned how long this is going to take, because the event is now 18 months old. So can someone give us a bit of a hopeful anticipation that that work will be done reasonably soon? Or maybe it's designed now and being consented. What's the...
Thank you, Donna.
Yes, good morning, through the chair. Thank you. So we're on the very last small section of design work to be completed this financial year, and it's for the priority 4 to 5 options, which were at the lower end of the emergency works. The great news though is that through discussions with the contractors, the items that have already got consents or didn't require consents, regardless of the prioritisation, has been brought forward. So we're very confident at this point in time, unless there's weather events or situations beyond our control, that all this work will be completed this financial year.
And the 11 million will be spent.
Yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Akuata-Brown.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just, excuse my ignorance or don't, in respect to climate change mitigation frameworks, do we now set up a fund to ensure that should an occurrence like we had last year, that is costing us the bill, a repair bill, so do we have to now put in place some of that finance aside as a precautionary measure to should another storm event happen or other events beyond our control, because Mother Earth is speaking up loud and clear. So have we got that now?
Through your worship, we have $3 million set aside every year in the long-term plan for emergency works, which is for unforeseen weather events. We have that set aside every year, the LTP. It's something that we've always historically spent. Our $2 million, the last long-term plan, the council increased that to $3 million, and it sits going forward, but we review it every LTP.
Thank you.
Councillor Burdett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Seconding this, I'm pleased to see the allocation there because it's critically important to Northern Roading contract have that additional funding to undertake maintenance, ongoing maintenance. So.
Thank you for that observation. Anyone else got something to say? Otherwise, we've got a mover in Councillor Seymour and a seconder in Councillor Burdett. If there's no further discussion, we note the contents of this report. We approve the variation to the existing TR 15/01B Northern Roading contract for an additional 18.5 million with a total contract value of 42.9 million. And 3, approves the variation to the existing TR 15/02 Western Roading contract for an additional $18.8 million with a total contract value of $83.9 million. All in favour?
Aye.
Contrary, carried. Thank you, Donna. We move on to page 58, and thank you to the councillors who attended the working sessions with the Ministry for the Environment on Wednesday.
Second.
We have a mover in Councillor Meredith Akuata-Brown and seconded Larry Foster. Any discussion about council's submission, which is attached, on the National Policy Statement for Highly Productive Land? Anyone wants to make a comment? Councillor Cranston.
Do we have a clear determinant of highly productive land? Yeah, that's why I'm asking the question. How?
Do we have that?
What is it? I mean, you chuck enough water and fertiliser and sand, it's highly productive.
Yeah, so through your worship, our current plans articulate where we have identified in terms of the Poverty Bay flats being highly productive areas. So we already have them.
And there's like clear zone boundaries.
Yep.
Any other comments or questions of staff? Councillor Dunn.
It might be a little bit outside the box, but does our ability to control forestry fall under this category? Are we able to prevent forestry on highly productive land under this? Doesn't say that it's not, it just says.
You could do if you've identified that through an evidence. It's currently in the existing areas, or you identify that that particular area is highly productive, then you could potentially exclude.
But you don't have to have, well, the NES requires resource consent up to the plant now.
Yeah, that would mean like if you were to convert, so if you were.
Can we just stick to speaking orders, Councillor Seymour? People can't hear you if you don't use your microphone. And you didn't ask to speak, but you may.
Thank you.
Go.
You don't require a resource consent to plant trees at the moment.
Okay.
I know, we still don't. But You don't.
So next is councillor Wharehenga, Dowsing, Akwata Brown, McLean.
I'm supportive of any submissions that really push central government in regards to their national policy statements and their national environmental standards. One thing that really frustrates me though in regards to the national policy statements and the environmental standards is the extra level of compliance and cost that our ratepayers end up having to be burdened with in order to be able to do all of the extra monitoring and all of those kinds of things. I have to commend staff, and particularly yourself, Nadine, in regards to really pushing central government around the resourcing and driving that point home on Monday. And I did hear that people in our community were also echoing the same things that we were in regards to our meeting. However, I'd like for us to just really keep drilling at that. And I know that they will be, that all local governments will be nationally, but that's the biggest concern. We all agree with having to have better standards and lifting our water standards and lifting how we use our highly productive land and being more strategic and things like that. We all agree with those things in principle. However, from central government, they're always kind of putting these things in front of us and then leaving it to us to resource off the ratepayer dollar. And that's the part that really needs to be pushed home with central government in regards to this.
Okay. We'll get to you at the end. We had. Okay, so you, Malcolm, yeah.
Thank you, Your Worship. At the meeting we were at last night, there was quite a bit of discussion about our land and protecting our land. And the word came out that farmers selling property now, even on the Poverty Bay flats, the sale will go to the highest bidder. And most of the highest bidders in really good productive land right now are overseas investors and wanting to put pine trees in there. And I think we really have to have a strong policy protecting that productive land. If the figures I read the other night in the paper, that area is now contributing $160 million to our GDP, that is serious. That is lottery plus lottery plus lottery, and we really have to protect it. There is some real sensitivity around this area of land. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dunn.
The actual question I wanted to ask was page 64, item 18, where it's about whenua Māori and it says conflicts with tino rangatiratanga. Can you give some background to that? Who said that classing whenua Māori land conflicts with tino rangatiratanga? What's the evidence behind that? That's what I'm asking. Thank you.
Through the chair, I'm expecting that they've largely relied on the principles of the treaty within the LGA. So principles are around tino rangatiratanga and self-determination. So for whenua Māori landowners being able to determine the use of their land, I think that's the interpretation used there.
Pat, if you want to speak, you need to use your microphone.
I would say, thank you, Madam Chair. I suggest it says may, because for many Māori landowners, they want the same protections as everybody else. So I think it may conflict rather than mandatory conflict.
Happy to add that word, may.
Okay, if you want to speak, put your hands up because I forgot our Meredith and then Bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to clarify just one of the key conversations that happens within our region is obviously around Māori land. And so, Keita, will this give, will council operate in a space where it will be a conduit with regard to iwi speaking into this, or just allow iwi to make submissions in their own space? Like, you know, we're working better together with our JMAs in those spaces. So will this give opportunity for a collaborative because of that inclusion pushing for whenua Māori land? So just in the framework I'm asking, is this going to do a better supportive help for iwi in this region, do you think?
Through the chair, I think we can definitely share the submission point with them, and if they choose to submit independently, then they're welcome to. I would be loath to put words into all our iwi partners' mouths.
Councillor Burdett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I can totally support the submission. One of the things I took from that meeting the other day, and I came to town specifically to listen to the Ministry of Environment, was it behoves this council to protect our highly productive land, and that's right across the district. Currently, we're a bit ambivalent about, you've heard Amber talk about forestry, and you're right in terms of an open market business, the best money wins at the end of the day. Somehow we've got to, I think, control in terms of our productive land, especially the flats, the Poldy Bay flats, food basket. And now that the companies are pushing out, it becomes even more critical that we protect them from what's been happening. From my point of view, I don't know quite how we do that, but I think it behoves us as a body that we've got to look seriously at some form of control.
Mrs. Kohere.
Through the chair, so we are aware of the issues. We're exploring opportunities that are within our scope, I guess, of influencing some of those. So we're aware of the issue. So approaching officers like the OIO. As I understand, they are largely overseas investors, and understanding that process where they give permission for perhaps the change of that land use and how we may influence around a regional strategic approach. That's in the beginning stages at the moment. So that is one avenue in which we're proactively trying to address this matter.
Councillor Foster.
Just a quick comment. Yeah, I totally support what we're trying to do. We need to protect our fertile lands, but in our spatial plan that we've been trying to develop, there was certainly comment about having a 50-kilometre exclusion zone around our Poverty Bay flats for planting of pine. And you know, I was really pleased to hear that that had been promoted, and we could be including that into our spatial plan and part of our consenting requirements. So, because the connotations of having plantation forestry, it's not just taking up that land. There's other connotations of drift and all that kind of stuff from pollen that does affect the fertility of the land. So there's certainly other issues. So we need to make sure that we are protecting what we cherish.
Thank you. Any other discussion around our submission? If not, we've got a mover in Councillor Dunn and a seconder in... Oh, am I on the next page? Pat and Meredith moved it. All in favour? Aye. Contrary, carried. We'll have a quick coffee break and then we'll come back and talk about our annual report and the summary. Oh. Oh, this is where I'm at, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we'll come back to that. Yeah, that's not. Councillors, we're going to move to page 67, our council submission on the proposed national policy statement on urban development. Thank you, Ms. Here. Any discussions around this paper? Do you want to give us a little lowdown, or are there some comments from councillors?
I guess the points to note are largely it relinquishes us really of our obligations of having to provide what's known as a HAPA, so a housing assessment, which was putting additional impact on our limited resource. So it's the shift is really around those larger growth centres in the country. It's unfortunate that our census information won't be comprehensive so that we could give that view as well in this submission. So we're looking at how we monitor growth in the region as well. But in terms of obligations on council, it's one less reporting requirement really.
Okay, Councillor Dowsing.
Thank you. I'll move, and I'd just like to state that our council is doing an excellent job with the spatial plan to actually ensure that we're meeting our responsibilities around this area anyway. So I'm happy with our position and to note the report.
Seconded by Councillor Wilson. Anyone else have something to add? If not, moved by Councillor Dowsing, seconded by Councillor Wilson. Note the contents of the report and approves the submission of the proposed national policy statement for urban development. All in favour? Aye. Contrary, carried. So now we move to the beautiful, comprehensive document that our staff prepared, looking back on the year that we have had. I thank you guys. It is a massive amount of work that's been put into this document. I'll open the floor for councillors to ask any questions. Would you like to have a quick talk, Pauline, before we hit the road?
Yeah, just if I may, highlight in terms of the year financially, we've come in really positively, so $4.4 million surplus. We've tracked with the additional funds, tracked very close to the capital works expenditure. So we've been chipping away at a lot of legacy issues and addressing them. And so I think for us, performance-wise, it's been quite a stellar year, with the exception of, as we know, there are some areas that still need some further focus going forward into this next financial year. But I just firstly, we move to Pauline, is just acknowledge the efforts and work of all the staff of council that have been involved to help get us here. Thank you.
Through your worship, just wanted to give you an update, sort of what the process for the annual report. So in terms of, in substance, the 20th of September, we were signed off for the annual report. And therefore, at that point in time, the agenda was collated, and so that's all you had in some substance of what is in there. However, that process was subject to technical review and the audit partner review. So there is a list of track changes which you have on in front of you, or what were those minor changes for what you actually have in the agenda, and the actual pages and things and notes that it relates to. And also the same thing as part of the process, GHL was also signed off on the 20th. So from that time to now, in collation of that, there were some adjustments within the document. But in substance, it is as you have in front of you.
Thank you, Pauline. Councillor Dowsing, and then Councillor Cranston, then Councillor Foster.
Thank you. I'm happy to move the paper, the recommendation, sorry. I'd like to say that there's always going to be a new most important issue in council, as we've spent time knocking things off the list over these last couple of years. But what I'd like to see is actually here, when we have our performance highlights and areas of improvement, I'd like to see a process to either introduce these into future tairāwhiti or coming committee, so that we've got action points around how we're going to improve these, or reporting on the steps being taken. So instead of just seeing them once a year, it should be these are the items that should be recurring. These are almost more important than major project updates, because these are these are council's primary activity updates, So we need to keep an eye on our core requirements, and that's what we're doing here. Beyond that, excellent report. Thank you very much.
Councillor Cranston.
Yeah, thanks. Just a specific issue out of it. I've decided that we're doing it all wrong. No, not the reporting, just the issue of the waste streams and how we're actually dealing with the bins. We did have a presentation probably a year and a half ago now about the guy that was looking at the bins there. In the last week, it's been absolutely terrible. I've sort of seen rubbish getting blown all around the city because of the wind and that, getting stuck in hedges and fences and that. The bins just aren't satisfactory, and we've really got to look at it. Just this morning, my wife bikes to work, and she texted me as soon as she got to work, and she said, "Oh, what the heck's happened?" All the way from Craig Road right through to Rutley Bridge and on the bridge. Not only was the litter getting blown around, but there's glass, broken glass all the way along in the bike thing. So the bins just are totally wrong. They're just not working. So the issue that we had a presentation on about getting wheelie bins and that was a long time ago. And in this report, I'm trying to find it quickly. It's in there somewhere, but I can't put my hand on it quickly. It does allude to the fact that we are looking at it, but we've been looking at it for a year and a half or so, and it seems to have gone nowhere. And I think it's probably a little bit more serious for the state of our city than I'd originally anticipated, because when it blows, it's everywhere, and those bins, and it's always going to be that case in a heavy wind. So what are we doing in that space of wheelie bins and sorting that out?
Mr. White has removed himself to go to just through your worship in that area, we've got that on the work program to do. So there was some, I think it's scheduled for next, this financial year to start doing the analysis, cost assessment for that.
Councillor Foster.
Yeah, just briefly, I just want to commend staff on a great report and a great year. We've made some big improvements over the year with our financial position and the amount of work, the percentage of the workload that we've done and achieved. So yeah, I really commend staff on a great year, and hopefully we'll have more improvement next year and get higher. And my bugbear is population. We say in there we've got 48,016, and in our website, and last year we had 49,100. So can we please amend that so we look like we're up to date with our population at this stage?
Thank you for that. Okay, that whole line. Let's start. Pat, Brian, Meredith.
Thank you very much. Thank you to council officers. And I appreciate that it is a huge amount of work, but I have gone through this really carefully, and there are a lot of questions that come out of it. So I don't want to bore everyone with all of them, but I draw to your attention the matter of the resource consents, because we're kidding ourselves if we don't, that the number completed within the time frame has dropped to 62% from 88 last year, and we have been talking about that all the time. There seems to be some discrepancies in the pedestrian and cycle safety stats, and this I'd like an answer to, because auditors have changed the numbers, and I want to know what basis they counted both deaths and injuries to then report back to us a different figure to the figures that appear on page 77 in the box. And we've talked about a decrease, and then they made quite different changes to the numbers. So in the audit report, but I can't find it right now in the part that's in confidence for this afternoon. I thought I'd just quickly highlight a couple of other issues, and then I'd like to, we'll work, I guess, through our committees on some of the other matters. The waste issue, we are actually growing the quantum of waste per household, and we've talked about this probably at the same time that Councillor Cranston just raised the issue of bins. Once upon a time, this council had a huge effort in reducing waste. We really worked hard at it. We had a waste minimisation officer, and we made a big effort to reduce the quantum of waste that went to households. Okay, so someone stopped collecting a couple of grades of plastic, but we can't use that as an excuse. I don't think we've been doing enough in education and persistent education in our community, because we see that it's increased substantially. So I want council to be looking at that again quite soon, so we can hear what's happening there. It's not the first time it's been raised. The water and coastal, a number of farm environment plans we haven't done. We said we were going to do 40 and we've managed to do 11. I mean, that isn't even 25%. And we can't blame lack of resources everywhere. On page 158, this is back to the level of waste, and we talk about a reduction of waste to landfill, and we've failed to meet each of those targets. So I won't read them out, but the last three on that top page, what was different to the levels of service and the performance measures. Again, under cultural facilities, we didn't meet even the number of visitors to the H.B. Williams Memorial Library. So are we looking at why that was? That's on page 162. So I hope that we've got a team taking a really close look and reporting back to us. And then because my pet hobby horse is that not everybody uses online comms, page 168, it tells you around people using email, phone, etc. What was the difference between the level of service and the performance measures? Of 402 people surveyed, only 14 indicated that they used email to contact council. And the next one, of 402 people surveyed, only 9 indicated that they used online, including social media, to contact council. So can we please remember that not everybody uses social media to get their information. And because it gets a huge amount of activity by a small group of people, dare I suggest, we tend to make an assumption that the world gets its information from online media. And if somebody bothered to do a survey, and we must have thought it was important, and we surveyed 402 people, well, that absolutely proves they don't. So let's remember that when we try
I just want to interject there. When we do ours, and this has been raised before, when we ring people, I can interject because I'm the chair and I decide when interjection happen. So I remember when we talked about this customer satisfaction is that we still use landlines to contact people. It is that. So that to me is the bigger question we should ask. We should be reaching everyone because people that still have landlines probably don't use the internet or Facebook. Lots of them don't. So I do think the information we got here, the bigger question we should ask, have we really reached everyone who use our service, the people that do use Facebook? So to me, that's the bigger question we should be asking here. Is our customer satisfaction. We only ring people that are at home and have home lines. So to me, there's a bigger question to be asked. Are we really getting the information of people that live in our region?
Absolutely. So
anyway, you can carry on.
Thank you. But I just think that surely, if that was the outcome we got, even the person doing it internally shouldn't take governance to need to raise it. Management should have said to itself, is this the right way to be sharing information? And then, we've got young people telling us we don't do enough about climate change. And at the bottom of page 169, it says here, we've reviewed the tsunami inundation maps for Tairāwhiti. Now, some of us have been asking for better information for our coastal communities for quite a long time. And yet it tells us, and I hope this is old, we are monitoring. The new maps have arrived and we're currently awaiting a review on the product. Well, I mean, are we giving urgency to providing up-to-date maps? I think we might have them now, but this is supposed to be the report to the 30th of June, but it isn't because it's captured data subsequent to the 30th of June, even like who is the mayor. So I just think we need to be clear about what we're doing, and we should get this material out to our communities instead of just writing in here that we're awaiting a review. So there's quite a few things. And I had time to read the whole thing in the plane, so I could go on. But there's quite a few things in here that we haven't delivered as well as we should. And I know business of council is huge and hugely complex, but I hope that we are going to, having gone to the trouble to put it together, we've got the auditor's report, that we're actually going to take the time to go through each of these items, report them to the committees, and it's up to the committee chairs to see that happens and actually see what we're going to do differently. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Seymour. Councillor, you want to? Yes. Do you want? I think. Yeah. Yes, please.
So through your worship, and Councillor Seymour, you raised a number of areas that you've identified which I can say that, in particular around waste management and minimisation, there were many presentations that were given to council that also talked about the increase in our population, that then also talked about the additional disposable incomes that household has. So there were a number of variable factors that have gone into that we have seen increased tonnage at the waste station. So I think there's issues that that we're aware of, and we've highlighted in here that some of those issues and the things that we're doing to work on them. So I feel that while there are some areas for improvement, overall we have provided plans and reported on those plans since to council around what we're going to be doing to address that gap. I want to respond also in terms of that survey. So it's 400 people that have landlines, so they interview about 100 each quarter. And we have identified that there is a disproportionate amount of people that, even though they're randomly selected, the majority of them sit within a particular demographic type. So there are issues that we know there, and how can we get a better sample that's representative of the population. So we've been working around that, so we're not just relying on landlines as the mechanism. And in terms of that link back into council around what are we going to do, and I really agree with that. I think getting this rich data and applying it in a better way to inform our actions plan is something that we need to be doing better. We could be doing better. So we've kind of captured the progress through our quarterly reports to committees, but it's that link back at the year end. How is this information then informing or fine tuning our original plans and progress that's put in place?
Yeah, thank you. Madam Chair, I just missed one because it's a typo really, but because in defence of Tolaga Bay Uawa, on page 108, and it talks about other settlements are small with the largest population being Ruatoria 860, followed by Tolaga Bay 860. Well, actually that's both the same, with greatest respect, not in order of diminishing.
Okay, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Worship. It was encouraging to hear the CEO have a process for dealing with the results of the annual report. And councillors, the annual report is a really important document. It does hold to account management and staff as to how we performed over the last year with the plans that we had going forward. I'd like to talk in general terms. We have done a lot over this last year. A lot is happening, a lot has been done, a lot is being started, yet to finish. And we have got a catch cry 5 to thrive, okay? So what we're trying to do is keep those rate rises to 5%. Now, the challenge now is, of course, the world has changed even since we put those figures in place, because now inflation is at quite low, wages are not rising, okay? So there's going to be a challenge of affordability in the future. Not that I'm saying that you need to do anything different, but it's a balancing act and working with your community. My little korero when I opened the meeting, well, you know, it's getting your community on side. And for example, when you come up to do your financial strategy review, and I keep hearing from the forestry industry that they want to work with council about how you're going to do your roading financing and all the rest. They don't mind so much what the end result is, as long as they've been party to the discussions. And I think that's really important. I'm encouraged that I think that this council is moving in the way of being more collaborative. I would also, and I'm saying these general comments because this is probably the last occasion that I can say them, is that we always want to keep in the Councillor Dunn's idea of nimble and agile and, you know, all those sorts of things. And we've got to be that because it's such a complex and changing world now. And so it may not work for a lot of things, but working in collaboration with other people, maybe contracting out if that works better, but it should be always looked at, even if it isn't feasible in the end. But that's what I leave you with. And I thought the annual report was really good. It's complex, it's in detail. It has identified warts and all where we're not performing. And without that, of course, those people sitting around the table here can't do anything and can't make any decisions. So I feel very confident that the figures are right in the finances. And I thank Pauline and the team for that. And so I say thanks very much for that annual report.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Councillor Akwaha-Brown and then Councillor Dowsing.
Thank you, Worship. Firstly, I just want to commend you and thank you for this report. I love the statement in number 7. Council has performed better than expected. So it means that we can raise our expectations as such. Anywho, but I'm wanting to ask, in respect to being enabled this particular financial season with a PGF fund, when that doesn't exist, when that's no longer around, well, is it that we will obviously give feedback to the government to say this region has absolutely appreciated the investment, much needed, but the external funding arm of what we've been able to achieve, how are we going to forecast into those spaces when that fund, obviously next year is a general election, so I'm just aware that we've had significant external grant funding into our region in this now, and we're very grateful for it. We are, but in the moving forward space, is that something you see or hear from those ministries, Minister, a continuance of? Because obviously it's been a big impact to our region achievements, and so that's my query today.
Through your worship, so the LTP has been based on our business as usual, so it hasn't factored in the external grant funding that the opportunity like the PGF brought to us, although where there was certainty, we then amended it and included it in the years going forward. But in the out years, we don't include in there any other billion-dollar region funds. That being said, in terms of future grant funding, if there were other facilities, like we've got a community facility strategy that we share with Sport Gisborne, Tairāwhiti, ECT and ourselves, and that's to kind of direct investment into the right places. We do have our ECT as an alternate funding source, and there's likely, as governments come and change, other opportunities that will be out there in the future, but for the purposes of certainty, LTP is a model around what we know is actually going to be there for the next 3 years.
Thank you. Councillor Dowsing.
Thank you. Just as a right of
Is this
reply.
your right of reply?
Exactly.
Do we have a seconder?
There was one question I asked, which I think we all ought to have the answer. Why did the auditors change their reporting of the deaths and injuries? Because they have changed them to what was reported in here. James.
Through your worship. So what happened was that we had 2018-2019 data, but that data was only available up until January. So that's to do with this, how they gather the data. So we had, and on year we have to take full year. So we had to go back and take the full year. So we essentially had to take a 2018 year. So that's the reason for it.
It was a different period.
Yes. We thought we had a whole lot, but we didn't have it.
Thank you.
Thank you. So if there are no other discussions, seconded by Councillor McLean, right of reply.
Thank you. I think it was well summarised that everyone had intentions that there was still more work to do, which is excellent, and we've identified those in what we didn't do well there. I think we've encapsulated that quite accurately. I think on the waste minimisation part, when we talked about that last year, we were very intent on seeing more aspirational outcomes from it. And whilst those were partially developed, we haven't seen delivery of those aspirational concepts yet. So that is the next step of delivery there that we'd like to see. To Councillor Foster, you'll be glad to know that the census data is out now, and apparently we have 47,565 people.
So now we have 5 different.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So yes, it seems like we're the only population in the country that shrank, but well, has shrank over time. But yeah, well, not since 2013, but 26 at 48,000 something.
Okay, so we've got a mover and a seconder, Councillor Dowsing and Councillor McLean. If there's no other discussion, well, there's none. We note the report, adopt the annual report and annual report summary for the year ended 30 June 2019 in accordance with Section 98 of the Local Government Act 2002, subject to any minor corrections, e.g. formatting, grammatical or typos. 3, signs the statement of compliance and responsibility once adopted. All in favour? contrary, carried. Thank you, everyone, and thanks, Nadine, for your guidance and leading your team to deliver this massive piece of work. We move on to page 268. We are now going to talk about the proposed plan change for inner harbour car parking provisions. And you can see that the independent commissioner has released his report and made recommendations. So Yannick, are you going to give us a quick little overview and then people can ask their questions? Thank you.
Kia ora tātou. As you all know, Plan Change 4 relates to on-site car parking within the inner harbour area. It's a very small area affected. Critically, it supports our aspiration as an organisation for the overall inner harbour revitalisation. And it does so by giving developers and landowners the flexibility to provide car parking which matches their needs. That's it. A hearing was held in July by Commissioner Brent Cowie. He provided a recommendation since, which supports the plan change proposal with a minor amendment. What we're seeking here is Council's decision to adopt that recommendation. That's the proposal in a nutshell. Thank you. Any questions I'm happy to receive.
So thank you for that. So there was a hearings process, independent commissioner, he's made recommendations. So what staff are asking us is to adopt the recommendations made by an independent commissioner. Oh, no one's ever quiet, so I'm very, very surprised. We go with Councillor Cranston and then Councillor Foster.
I'm happy to move. The only thing we couldn't do down on that site, well, I mean, we've made compromises and adjustments all the way through the process. The only thing we couldn't do down on that site was make more land. And that's the only way to solve the problem for some of the people. So I think there have been compromises made all the way along and we're sort of meeting the whole community rather than just single sectors.
Thank you for that. We've got a second and Councillor Wharehinga, yes, Councillor Foster and then Councillor Akuata Brown.
Yeah, no, I support it. I mean, the whole environment is just changing rapidly around there, and I applaud the work that's gone on. It's looking absolutely fantastic. It's a huge connection to Titirangi as well. All the work that's happening there, and it's going to be finished in the next week. I think the community is really proud of. There's winners and losers in this, unfortunately, but the whole idea is to have an environment where the public can feel like we're utilising one of our biggest assets, which in most areas is their waterfront and the inner harbour. So and it's a major connection for the CBD. So there's a bigger picture down the track actually with this whole environment, with our spatial planning for the future. So like I said, it's not going to appease everybody, but I think the majority of this region will be really happy with the outcome of this plan. It does highlight the inefficiency again of our Tarawhiti Resource Management Plan and the parking requirements that we've got, antiquated parking requirements that should not even be there. So hopefully they'll be reviewed in the future. But this is a good stepping stone and a good indication of where we want to go. So more than happy.
Thank you, Councillor Akuata Brown and then Councillor.
I guess I just want to raise in respect to the risk of not moving this forward as such, that we do have people within our community who are raising a concern around favouring perhaps a set group of people and wanting to ask, is there a consideration to consider the Commissioner's discussion, because it's a prime entertainment space. There's a whole bunch of activity going on there, boating community, all of those factors. And so concerns from some constituents that we might be seen as this collective group and just pushing through, dare I say, rubber stamping, the framework of something that could have, in the now, we see, as we say, we've talked about this issue, but in future reference to those groups that might see the shared and complex offices being built having an impact on other users. So I'm saying to you today, Yannick, that some people are concerned we should perhaps peruse the Commissioner's considerations just at this time, because obviously we're in a voting space, etc. But I'm asking you, is that's been considered, or are we just, this is just due process in this space. But the consideration of the Commissioner's recommendations be held for the new council be considered was what was put to me as an ask. So that's all I'm asking you today. Kia ora.
Through the chair, I probably wouldn't recommend perusing a commissioner's recommendation. There has been a clear process followed in terms of RMA publicly notified hearing, so the opportunity for those parts of the community to participate has been well advertised and due process has been followed.
Sorry, so then we're confident we have done all that's needed as council. Thank you.
Councillor Seymour was next. Yes. John.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to acknowledge that, the waterfront and the inner harbour is a really important part of this district, but it is also the boat launching place for a large number of our community for whom that is their recreation. I totally understand, because I well understand the RMA. We have been through that appropriate process under the RMA, but I don't think we have come out with the best outcome. We have made compromises along the way, and the gardens and the parking in Zone B have actually been made angle parks, where once upon a time they were parallel parks. So that was a compromise that was arrived at. But I still do have heard from a number of people that are still unhappy about it. It certainly is not meeting the needs of everyone, and that's obviously something that's pretty nigh impossible. But I do have regrets that this is the outcome we've arrived at. I think that the intent was fine. I still think the gardens on the left-hand side of the road are over the top, and they don't need to extrude as far as they do into the roadway, because it is now, I hear from boat owners, impossible for two large boats to pass on the roadway. And I mean, the road was wide once. We know that it was the ambition of the previous chief executive to introduce walking and cycling in spades into that area, and we have debated it 100 times. I completely respect the process of Dr. Cowie in getting this to paper on the agenda today, but I can't support it. Thank you.
You want to comment on that? Who wants to comment on that?
Through the chair, just I guess additional commentary in response to Councillor Seymour's comments. The independent commissioner has balanced council's responsibilities in terms of the RMA, so has weighed the impact of effects. So I would suggest the recommendation in front of you is the best advice and well considered in terms of challenge as well, in terms of adopting, and understand councillor's sentiments.
And through your worship, I just might want to add that as has been said around the changes that have been made over the course, where we have listened and tried to accommodate additional car parks, and all up the amounts still the same as we moved from having the horizontal through to the diagonal car parks on the left-hand side. We've increased our boat trailer parking from 12 then to 22, and now we can see that we can get another 8 in there. So we have been working, and I am going to go with Captain Craig Miller, and we're going to have a look firsthand in terms of the issues that are down there. I think that at the moment it's quite congested. There's a lot of construction going on. People aren't behaving and parking in the right places. So with additional signage, that might help us.
Councillor McLean.
Thank you, Your Worship. I've been one of the critics as this project's gone on, and whilst it's come together rather well, I agree with Councillor Seymour that the left-hand side is the problem area, and I've got that from one or two community people. It's quite confronting when you drive down there and you see these big concrete constructions that come out, and I just think they're protruding into our road just too much. But
So I just want to comment and clarify what we are talking about now. We are not talking about the layout of stage 1 or 2 in the inner harbour. This paper is only about the parking provisions that businesses have. So I hear what you're saying, but what you are saying is not relevant to this paper. So
well, it's probably prior to another comment that is there an opportunity to have a look at parts of the report, the
No.
Commissioner's report? Okay.
No, that's not how. No. Anyone else wants to talk about this provision, this paper? The parking provisions. Councillor Dowsing.
Thank you. I like being in harbour now, by the way. It's great.
Oh, it's election time.
Can definitely get our boat past other boats too, which is great. I think what is still within this paper and something that still presents opportunity is that we do have the zoning there for the boat lift area, which needs to be potentially rationalised to increase additional parking in terms of perhaps co-locating that boat lift with some additional parking. But it's at the moment it's excellent, and the result, although I actually was against changing the zoning, the parking requirements in that area initially. I think it's practical now and it's a good step.
Anyone else have any comments on this paper from Dr. Cowie and the recommendation made by staff? If not, we've got a mover in Councillor Cranston. We've got a seconder in Councillor Wharehinga. And it is move 1A, contents of the report, 2A and B, adopting Dr. Brent Cowie's reports and recommendations. All in favour? Aye. Contrary? Carried. We move on to page 283. And I would welcome Steve and Harley to the front. So, oh, we missed our one paper. While you guys, yeah. My pages are not turning well today. Page 283 is appointment of new administrative trustee to Gisborne District Disaster Relief Trust. So at this stage, Mrs. Louise Bennett is still on our books as the administrative trustee. And it is council's recommendation that Mr. Viremu Tamati Smith be the disaster relief. 283, are you on there? No. Okay, so it is hands up because it's an appointment of Mr. Tamati. It would be unanimous. Thank you, Coral. Okay, wow, I definitely skipped some pages. Let's go to page 286, where it's just practical stuff for when the council transition. So we do need to have our hearing commissioners in place. So it appoints Councillor Pat Seymour, Josh, Larry, Amber as hearing commissioners. And then there are certain functions that the mayor usually have that will be passed over to the CEO in that transition period. So I'll move that. Seconded 286. Who seconded? Andy Cranston. All in favour? Thank you. Hands up because it is people that we're appointing to the Hearings Commission. It is unanimous. Thank you, Coral.
Can I just make a comment to say thank you for this report? I found it really helpful. There's a lot of information there that I shouldn't really say this, but I wasn't aware of in between. So I found it very useful. So if people ask, I can say I'm no longer a councillor after today. Thank you. Thank you for the report. It was good.
Right. So councillors, I welcome our friends from Activate Tairāwhiti, Steve and Harley. Thank you for joining us. We're going to talk about our Tairāwhiti Economic Action Plan refresh. And this is just a catch up. We adopted this in March, April, and there's just a few minor changes. So they will talk to us about the minor changes, but it's not a significant difference from what we saw 3 or 4 months ago. So the floor is yours. Just use the microphone. Welcome.
Thank you, Your Worship and councillors, for this opportunity. So yes, it's been a bit of a process getting us to this point today, and very much appreciate the support from yourselves and council management to get in early with the council projects for inclusion in the plan. And pleased to report this morning that they are all included in the plan for adoption by the steering group at our meeting next week on the 2nd of October. The time between when the council put forward its actions to today has been quite a significant period of engagement with Tairāwhiti iwi particularly. And we're very pleased to report back that as part of this process, we have a much stronger participation with our iwi colleagues and counterparts around the steering group table, and a much stronger integration of the Māori Economic Development Report aspirations into this refreshed plan. And that's reflected in the increase and scale of the Māori actions, particularly within the plan. Next steps from here are for this plan to be adopted at the steering group meeting on the 2nd of October, where it will then go forward for design and print with anticipated publication on the 1st of November.
Thank you for that, Steve. Any questions, comments? Councillor, Harley? Harley first, and then we'll move to questions. And then Nadine. Good. Microphone.
So I just wanted to mention, I'm sorry I didn't get this into the actual cover report itself, because hopefully some of you went kind of flicking through to kind of reconcile what had changed from the March meeting. But for, so you're aware, there so it's largely the same with the inclusions of two actions. The first one is 3.3, which is on page 307, and that refers to water and the relationship with iwi. And so GDC has been highlighted as the lead in that. And then the second one, and Councillor Seymour, you would be pleased to hear, 4.4, the inclusion of the Tokomaru Bay Heritage Water Restoration Projects as part of the Economic Action Plan. There are some minor amendments to action 5.2, and that's really around the wording, because before I think we might have been specific about the type of plan that we were going through, but we've made it generic in terms of an RLTP process for transport, and minor amended wording in action 9.7.
Thank you for that. The floor is open. Councillor Foster, then Councillor
Thank you.
Wilson.
Look, I applaud reading this. It was just so exciting reading all the different outcomes that have happened, and the combination now with the two plans together. Everyone's on the same page, and some of the outcomes and the potential outcomes are absolutely just so exciting for our future. You know, when you think about all the different initiatives with the extra kiwi fruit in the flats, and you know, working with the wharves in particular up the coast, the AUD, alternative use and disposal, with our wastewater, absolutely fantastic. So, you know, I just was enthralled when I read through every little word of the whole thing and the outcomes at the end. It was just absolutely fantastic. So congratulations to AT and the team and all the iwi involvement in it, because this is a huge reflection of the future of this region and where we're going. And if we're at the top of the economic development list in the country at the moment, we're not going to be dropping back. Looking at this plan here, we've got a huge future in front of us. So awesome, fantastic to see. There's one little thing I'd like to just comment on, and that's surf breaks of national significance. We're saying we've got 3. Well, that's 3 areas. We actually have 6. So, you know, if we're going to promote our region as a surfing fraternity, I think we should be identifying the fact that we have 6 surf breaks of national significance. Some of them are bracketed under one area, but you know, they're actually breaks of individual breaks. So they have got protection rights within themselves. So let's brag where we can.
Thank you for that, Councillor.
Yeah, it's the most in New Zealand. Yeah, exactly.
Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, thank you. Look, I enjoyed reading this plan. It is quite comprehensive, and as Councillor Foster says, pretty exciting too. I think back over the history of how we've tried to get economic development going in this region. We had the early days of the Tairāwhiti Development Task Force, where we did have Runanga leaders and a few other people sitting around the table, but the difference nowadays is that AT is driving this process, and we're getting so much more success. Okay, after the praise, I've just got a question. Okay, obviously you would like certain of these projects funded by the PGF. How do you go about prioritising what goes forward for that?
Through yourself, Your Worship. The PGF fund is a government fund, and applicants can deal directly with government with their particular applications. So the government ultimately runs the filter over what applications they support, and applicants are free to work directly with government to progress their own applications. Where the regional action plan and the steering group come into play is that the government also looks to see what type of regional support there is for particular actions. And that's where the opportunity to engage with this plan and with the steering group is presented. And we have been working with a number of applications and applicants to support their PGF applications into government.
Councillor Seymour, Councillor Parehinga, Councillor Akwata-Brown, Councillor Dowding. You guys need to remember that.
Thank you very much for the document. Since it is in draft, and on the front page we talk about 16 of initially 54 actions have been completed, can I suggest that you maybe note the 16 that have been achieved, because that gives substance to the document, and if some are further down the development path than others, maybe they could be noted. And my second point or query is around the 19, this is on page 303, the 19.5 million of the PGF that was committed to the wood cluster and the further development out there. How much of that 19 million has been actually received by whatever the activities are that are going on out there?
Yes, I'm not directly connected to that project to be able to give an exact figure.
Yes, it is. This is PG. I'm asking about the PGF money, but it does fall under the comments of the ECP.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've had $500,000 of the 20 actually delivered cash, and which has gone into the wood cluster. And we're very close to agreeing the final terms and conditions of the funding agreement for the balance of the money, and we've identified, and in that we've specifically set out, I think it's the next tranche is a bit over $5 million. So when we sign that contract, $5 million will flow. Fair to say, trustees and myself are getting pretty, it's taken a long time and patience has worn thin, but I do genuinely think we're going to get there very shortly.
500,000 is the answer, thank you. But we look forward to, and just I had one other query, because it is a good document, and it mentions a couple of places, 600 new jobs. Are they positions in the horticultural development that are actually happening as a result of private enterprise, or are they some of the activities that Activate Te Rāwhiti has been heavily involved in?
That 600 jobs is across business across the region. So it's a mix of horticulture, forestry, the roading engineering works that the council has been driving, engineering works, just general business. There's a labour shortage currently.
We know there's a labour shortage. Thank you. Josh, thank you.
Thank you, Worship. I do want to acknowledge people like Huti Watson and the others that helped put together the Aunty Tina Karaitiana that helped put together the Māori actions under the regards to economic action plan. And that's where my question is actually. It's in regards to like seeing that those things are encapsulated in Cypress Tea. It's fantastic. Acknowledging that they were the ones that kind of drove that moving forward. I want to ask what the capacity is like inside AT in order to be able to deliver on those Māori actions. Who they were the ones that were leading it. Who's leading those actions now?
Yes, so I think it's important to note that the Māori Economic Development Report is the operative document to inform the action plan itself with regard to how we give effect to Māori economic development aspirations. The work that Tina and Huti have done is now being picked up by the wider Tairāwhiti iwi group at the table of the steering group. And we're currently in discussion with them about the kind of resourcing and support needed to put the Māori actions into effect.
No, thank you very much for that. Yeah, thank you very much for that, that answer. And that's kind of on your table at the moment, Steve. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen, for the report and to all those who've worked on it. Yesterday, I had the opportunity to spend the afternoon with the Children's Commissioner, Judge Andrew Beecroft. And so one of the things when I read through an economic action, and I'm always cognizant of the need to line that up with social parameters around wellness and happiness. So parts of the world have these happiness factors incorporated throughout their economic action plans. So I'm just, wanting to ensure that we know that with good economic stability and all of that, it adds to life gains and all those frameworks, but just not feeling that's kind of all socialist in the space of a model. But I just want to raise that when I read Tairāwhiti Māori have the most gain from economic transformation, I really want us to start talking about if we do well for any group, all gain. We need to start considerations around how we are working well together. Of course, thank you that there's considerations of inclusivity in the Māori Action Plan, but Tairāwhiti as a whole will benefit when we all work well together. The gains are for all of us, but of course we have some issue that you've noted in this page 325, I believe I'm on, with regard to living standards, and we're underperforming in certain aspects pertaining to Māori. But I just would love to see the rhetoric be more around when we care for all people, particularly those who are having a tougher time, and in this space, Māori, all gain. It's an all. So, but thank you that you have given some thorough kind of data into this space and the refresh of it. I am excited for our future because I believe we are steering the waka in that way. So, kia ora.
Councillor Dowsing and then Councillor Deet.
Thank you. I was going to make a similar statement about the fact that this is an economic action plan, but it would be nice to see some alignment with social, environmental and cultural outcomes in here too. But I am particularly happy to see that there's there's a lot of new actions in there too, driving forward the technology piece and more particularly the future proofing of our prosperity. I think there's some great points in there. One thing I think is a step further that needs to be taken is that there's a lot of partners in here, and whilst agencies can help design the outcomes, it will be individuals and businesses that take this forward. And how do we begin to engage with them and to communicate these opportunities and try to get some uptake from external resource to help start delivering. And then finally, I had one particular point which I was going to make to our Chief Executive, which is around 9.4, developing a framework for more inclusive economy in Tairāwhiti, which may include financial literacy programs and support for businesses offering a living wage for employers. Now, as I understand it, well, GDC is a partner there, but we're not a living wage employer, I believe. So there's a little bit of irony in that we should probably be doing better. And I would question whether all of those partners are living wage employers. AT has the lead. Are you guys living wage employers? Great. Can we do better there from a council point of view?
Very Your Worship, yes, Councillor Dowsing, we can do better. We do have some staff, small number, that aren't quite on living wage. We'll be looking at that.
Councillor Burdett and then Councillor McLean.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have three issues here I want to ask questions of. In terms of, this is a very good report and you guys have done well. However, one thing when you read right through the whole thing, something that is lacking, sadly lacking, are advisory services north of Whangarā. Seriously lacking. The second one, and it's council's most critical asset in terms of the well-being of the whole of the coast, and I talk from Tolaga Bay right to the northern end. That is the spring below Ruatoria, which in a dry summer or an average summer supplies the whole of the coast at a huge cost. But I'm more concerned about the security. I mean, I've taken the council twice after elections to have a look and have been appealing for some type of security in that spring continuity of use. The road itself, the drainage and the lack of, or the neglect, I suppose, that on the coast is council's most critical asset, is the water supply in Ruatoria. And the third one at the bottom of 3.4, 6,000 hectares, that's a huge area, including the completion of land use assessment. Have we got access to this, or who's actually driving that?
So yes, the lead for that is through the iwi specific as the lead agent for that action. So the specific iwi is the lead, so there'll be a person within the iwi that is the lead person for that project. So they, in terms of that 6,000 hectares, there's already a process and a project set up to deliver this action. And that's being led by that particular iwi.
It's Willie Te Aho is the project lead. Sorry, it's Willie Te Aho is the lead.
Supplementary, Councillor Biddy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had the good fortune to attend a discussion group hosted by Pakewo Farms at Makarika Station last week. There would have been almost 40 people there, including a number of government agencies, including someone from yourselves. There were no iwi reps there. And this encompassed from Wairoa to the top end of the coast. Very, very productive. I just make the point.
Councillor McLean. Thank you, Councillor Biddy.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was really pleased to read a paper like this because a few years ago I was around the table at the Chamber of Commerce and we thought we were the economic developers in those days, and how wrong were we? You know, there's a lot of criticism going on about the economic arm of council and not doing this and not doing that and going nowhere. And one can only but say the right direction has been taken because the result was in the paper the other night and we were the top region of the country. So we must, you know, celebrate that. And I think we're going down the right path, and in the next few years, it's going to be wicked. And it'll be hard to better a smaller region like this. So go get it, mate, and your actions speak louder than words. So that's a good theory to work on. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussions? Councillor Cranston.
Yeah, thank you. On page 325, I know it's probably Councillor Foster's bandwagon, but I'll take it up. Hard keeping up with statistics, I understand that, but if the average house price is 230K, I'll have 6 of them, please. It's a very outdated number. It would be really exciting if all the other things were outdated, like unemployment and health stats as well, if they were trending with the same inaccuracy, that would be fantastic. But yeah, just a comment, really.
Those regional performance stats, they will be updated. They'll be as current and as up to date as possible for the end of October.
If there are no other questions, I would like to comment that it is great this time around that there's council involvement. Right when it started off, we were kept in the dark. So I'm really grateful that you have consulted with us regularly. We talk about our council input. We know what's going on. So thank you for today as well. And do I have a mover for this? Moved by Councillor Bedette, seconded by Councillor McLean. If there are no other discussions or input, I'll put it to our table. All in favour? Contrary, carried. Hey, thanks a lot for coming to talk to us today. So now we're going to move, councillors, to page 357, which is the CEO report. And thank you, Nadine, for a very comprehensive report. Yes, and if you space it out. Yeah, oh yeah, no, it will be. Councillor Dunn.
I'm feeling like a little bit of negative Nancy at the moment, but I'm going to raise it anyway. This morning we had the future of our region come to us about climate change and telling us that it's real. And I look at that down the track and I think, what does that actually mean for this organisation and the work that we do? And I read in this report that we're building seawalls along the coast. I read that we're going to put a cycleway along the coastline. And it kind of freaks me out because I think on one hand, we're saying do this, and then all our actions are doing the opposite. And at what point do we start saying the solutions that we keep going to are no longer going to work in the era of climate change? So I just wanted to raise that because all of our solutions that we keep going to are going to fail in the age of climate change with sea level rise. And one of the key things that I think most people aren't acknowledging is for our coastline, and this is me being a coastal scientist, a 1 centimetre rise in sea level equates to 10 to 100 metre retreat of the shoreline. The impact for us is massive, massive. So I just think as we go forward and think about how we are going to adjust to climate change, it's going to have huge impacts for our decision making. And I just wanted to put that out there. About 10 metres to 100 metres, depending on.
Thank you for that, Councillor Dunn. Yes, sobering thoughts. Councillor Burdett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to compliment our CEO on a very detailed and informative report. People go to 368. The progress, I was on like a broken record about the Waipu for years. But if you look at those two statements at the top of 368, the Waipu Koka Huhua, now there's been a provincial growth fund allocation to the bottom half of the Waipu, and the joint management agreement in place. There's actually action taking place. And when you drive back down to make sure how it happened, the CEO is responsible for that. There are other issues in this report I could talk to, but I think well done anyway.
Thank you, Councillor Burdett. Councillor Akuahata Brown.
I just wanted to just make a comment really to thank Nadine and her team in respect to the elections space. Thank you. She's popped out either, because as you note in this, you know, the increasing voter participation space, there has been this kind of buzz talk space of that, and as we see, we've shifted some numbers spaces, and that's in respect to that. And as a strong proponent of participatory democracy, I'm heartened that the mahi that has happened in the space has seen some movement upwards of those standings. So thank you so much for all that work, and I look forward to October 12th, of course. Kia ora.
Councillor Foster.
Yeah, I just want to congratulate the CEO on a good report again. But yeah, I'm going to sound like a bit like a broken record as well. Just on page 374, the network operating framework, when we talk about this will require further engagement with the community, and it's about the heavy vehicle access and movement through our city. So we were told that there would be a report later this year, I believe November, that will be highlighting some issues and some remedies, but when I read this will require further engagement with the community, I kind of had started getting alarm bells that it could take longer than we first anticipated. So can I just get an update on that, please?
Chair, the NOF is in fact a separate piece of work to identifying proposed routes for heavy traffic. So engagement will still happen with the NOF. But the report that you're referring to in November will definitely still progress with feedback on preferred routes.
Can we just get everyone to speak before you?
Pat speaks all the time, a couple of times through in and out. I was thinking I've learned from her how to do this. I just forgot to mention, because I've got my notes. I left them in my purse under the table. Alfred Cox Skate Park, I wanted to ask, just putting it out there, could, in that 40K design space, is there a space to plant a tree in recognition of a person who worked hard in that space and has passed away? I don't want to, I just am asking, there's a lot of young people in this region that's had a wonderful person support them who worked at the skate park, ran it, such. So I just wanted to ask, for a tree, something of Bill, be planted in recognition of Julie. Kia ora.
Anyone else want to? We're talking at Mayor. Councillor Seymour, thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, we have got the some comment in this report with respect to this action for healthy waterways, and I'd just like to know where we, and I don't think I can see it in here, what agreement we reached about what process we will utilise to ensure the council puts in a submission before the closing date, because quite a few councillors and many council officers went to that meeting the other day. A few councillors went again in the evening. It is really important for this district that we put in a submission, but that it be a submission that at least has some councillor buy-in. And I don't think you'll get another extension. I mean, there's been one extension of time for the submission, so I think it'd be optimistic to think that was going to happen. And one of my pet hobby horses, because I'm all for providing electric charging stations where they're getting used, but when did we decide to make an application to fund one as a council project? I thought electric charging stations belong to Eastland Group. I see in this report on funding grants, I've just turned the page over, but in here somewhere we've made an application for 20,000 for one at Tapuia.
So I'll just respond to the first question, which is around the consultation feedback process for freshwater. So in terms of that, we will be submitting a response. It can either be an officer's response or a council response, but we will put that back to the new council meets as an FYI that we put forward, given the timing around the elections. And so you heard the concerns that were raised anyway in terms of the increasing costs, the impact that it will have on the economy and all the other spin-offs. So I think we're not too far as well from what the Federated Farmers had raised there. So we'll be capturing all that in that submission document. But given the timing around elections, I'll bring it back in the new council as a noting that was submitted. In saying that, we are only at the early stage, so there are still there's still a bill to be created and submission points at that time frame as well. We will largely be supporting what LGNZ has to say too.
Yes, I read that. That's quite substantial, isn't it? LGN's report. Thank you. And then my question around the grant funding is actually on page 376.
Yes. So the council is moving to electric. A mix of electric vehicles in terms of the fleet. That particular fund was opened up to councils to apply, so why not?
I've got a question around the Manatuki, the township plan. So we had a hui last night in Manatuki, and several of the people at the hui came to see me afterwards to ask about the work that's happening in the domain, and there were some concerns raised around fencing that went up around it and some concreting work that were done, and they invited me to come and take a look. I didn't go at 9 p.m. last night, but yeah, I was just wondering that's just a comment I heard last night, and I haven't spoken to any staff or asked any questions, so I'm just raising that some residents raised it with me last night, and that there were some concerns about the work happening in the Te Ara domain, and if we can just make sure we touch base with that community group to ensure we're all on the same page and they understand what work is happening, what the expectations are, and what of those expectations we are going to meet. I'm just flagging that to staff. Thank you. Any other questions on our CEO report? Councillor Burdett, use your microphone.
374. Very remiss of me in terms of when you look at the capital spend in the Northern Coast. I've been to those communities of late, and each one, without any prompting, said you make sure when you get back to that table, thank the council and acknowledge this is the biggest spend in the whole time I've been in council. Good on those communities. They're acknowledging it.
Thank you, Bill.
Madam Chair, I just have one further question. When you raised the matter of playgrounds, could we be advised what is going to happen in Pukamura Bay, please? Because we know that there's a plan to change the location or amend the location. That's got into the public domain already, but I would like to think that there was a community meeting held with the community, because they've always taken a really big interest in that playground. And with the shift in the riverbed, it has eroded, and it's been reported that we're going to shift the barbecue area, but nobody's told the councillor or the community, I don't believe, where that shift is going to. So could we have an update on that, please?
Sorry, Mr. White is not here to provide an update, but as I understand, there was a meeting up in Motu Bay recently about that.
And why don't we invite councillors when there is a meeting in the community?
Sorry if that has not occurred.
Mr. Wilson.
Through the chair, on behalf of Mr. White, I know that the Rec Community team are looking at where the suitable locations will be. They need to work through with regulatory as to where they can get a resource consent for any hard infrastructure that they're going to put back in, but that'll be done in conjunction with talking with the Motu Bay community.
And can you please advise the council, so at least if they can go? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dunn.
Yes, I just wanted to clarify what I said earlier, just so people are clear. A 1 centimetre rise in sea level can cause tens of metres of retreat on sandy coastlines, and we've got lots of sandy coastlines.
Thank you for that. Any other comments? If not, do we have a mover? So we've got a mover in Councillor Akwater Brown, seconded Councillor Dowsing. All in favour? Contrary, carried. Okay, so then we move on to our next paper, is on page 380. It is our major projects. Thank you for a thorough update. Any questions around our major projects? Now is your time to ask them. Moved by Councillor Dunn, seconded by myself. There's no more discussions. All in favour? Aye. Contrary, carried. Okay, so before we move into public excluded, oh, Malcolm, I'm sorry. Malcolm, the floor is yours.
Yeah, I'll just move that. I will say that.
Microphone.
I will say it was a pleasure representing the council at this particular conference. It was full on. It's a big 2 days, and you come home quite worn out. But the highlight was the evening where the GDC was put on top, and I can say the mood of the people that were in and around me at our table changed drastically. But like I said, what happens on tour stays on tour. But we were graced with the presence of Mr. Fulton, who was very, very congratulatory towards Gisborne. And he's a good supporter of this region, and he was really rapt. I can say that quite sincerely. He was really rapt that we won that prize. So it was well done.
Seconded by Councillor Dunn. I hope you're not referring to the Mayor and the CEO
I
who were
said
there
nothing.
with you.
I said what happens on tour stays on tour.
I might get an
AOI, emergency. Hey, moved by Malcolm, seconded by Shannon. All in favour? Contrary, carried. Everyone get their handkerchiefs out. We are now going to talk about our dear friend Brian and Graham. We're going to say thank you for two lovely councillors. Karen is not here today. So before we move into public excluded, Shannon's already crying. We, so we have got two lovely certificates here today to two of our favourite councillors. First, we talk about Graham Thompson. Graham, this is a certificate in recognition of being a councillor from 2001, wow, till 2019, and also being the chair of Assets and Infrastructure since 2001. Thank you for always keeping us on our toes, 2007. Thank you for always keeping us on our toes. Now that you're gone, we will go back to meat pies, but we'll miss you. Every time we have a little meat pie, we'll think of you. But thank you for your contribution to our work and also as your chair, as the chair of Assets and Infrastructure. I'll give you a hug because Karen's not here to do the hug. Oh, you know, I get it. You want to say it? Please do.
Thank you very much for that. And yeah, it's been a long time, and I'm quite convinced that I'm leaving at the right time as well. I just feel I've been here long enough, and I've done my bit, and my time's up. And there's been some happy times, and where you feel like you're achieving. There's been some times where it's not, you know, it's been a bit tough going, but that's how it is. That's how it is in this environment, and you've got to take the good with the bad. And I know that someone once said you'd probably leave with a boot up the bum from 49% of the people, because you only need 51% to be here, you know. So you can never always keep everyone happy, but you're here representing, while you try to represent everyone, you're elected by 51%, that's democracy. So yes, no, I'd like to thank all my colleagues and go back into history. There's been a few, and you go back to the early days when I was here, there's been some outstanding characters, and I particularly remember Councillor Hekawai and Councillor Davidson and a few of those, and I can assure you the environment around the table was quite a lot different in those days, and probably a lot more relaxed in some ways, even though they were characters in their own right, because what you said wasn't recorded, and sometimes you know there was some hard case banter across the table, and they were good. And I'd like to also remember and thank all the management teams that I've worked with over the years, and remember some that aren't here, including some that have passed on, and again, you don't always agree with them, but you walk out and can have a beer with them at the end of it, and that's the secret to it. You know, like to you can be friends at the end of the day. You can shake your hands, you can have a beer with them. So that's the thing you've got to just organise with sitting around this table within yourself, so you can go home and be happy. Enough. So that's David, Pauline, and Gadaline, the table, and Peter and Nadine and those other staff that are here. Thanks for everything, and again, and remembering those that aren't here.
Now I need to take my cough lolly out to speak. We'll have little speeches later over lunch, but next, Councillor Brian Wilson. In recognition of being a councillor also from 2001, so you guys are from the same batch, and being the chair and being the chair of Finance and Audit since 2010. Hi Brian, thanks a lot for the contributions you make. I always think you bring the voice of common sense whenever you stand up, and you well thought out debates. So we will miss you, or we'll also miss you at Health Board, but thanks a lot. And I always joke when people say sometimes people, older people need to move on, I always think what you say, I'll be put out to pasture. So today we are happy to put you out to pasture. Thank you for the wonderful contributions you've made. And there's a little certificate and a plant. Just say thank you. Because otherwise you've got your back to the mic. I can see here.
Okay, thanks for that. Usually these occasions are a bit like funerals, aren't they? People only say good things. Well, I hope they're going to. But anyway, look, 18 years is a long time to have been sitting around the table here. I look back on it fondly. Half of you would like to think that you're not going to be able to do without me. But then the other half says, that's not going to be right. If you've left the place better than what you went into it, of course it's going to be okay, and it sure is. And look, I've really valued the interaction with especially the younger ones that have come onto council, and there's quite a few of you from different backgrounds. I've learned a lot from you, and I hope that you've learned something from me as well. I thought I'd give you a little bit of a background, actually, how I got involved in council, because many councillors come to the table that have actually had nothing to do with council, never attended a meeting, know nothing about the processes, okay? And I always think they're at a total disadvantage. Of course, they always believe that certain things can get done and, you know, all the rest of it, but it'll take 3 years to get them sorted out. But anyway, look, my dad was a Napier City Councillor in the 1990s, okay? So every time I used to go down and visit the family, most of the time we're talking about Napier City Council business. I didn't mind so much because I did all my schooling there, so I was really interested in the area and have lots of friends still down there and family and all the rest of it. But I also got involved in council matters because I was appointed to a wastewater working group before I came on council, and that was set up with a community group and various iwi representatives, and we're trying to thrash out what's going to happen with our wastewater in the future. Also, council appointed a working group to look at utilising GHL by putting some of council's infrastructure in there and offsetting it against port income. You know, seeing whether there's a tax advantage or a more efficient way of doing things. That never really came to anything, but I did have a little bit of a background before I got here, so I did appreciate it. Actually, it was really funny listening to Graham before talking about Councillor Hikawai. He was a real character. Very rarely read his agendas or anything. But anyway, I remember there was some aspect coming up on the agenda, and it was in my early days, and I thought, well, who's a great speaker at the table? And I thought, oh, that Hemi, he knows how to talk, that boy. So anyway, I rang him up about the thing that was on the agenda. He didn't really know much about it. And I said, look, Hemi, there's this and this. And he said, oh, really? You know? And I said, yeah, you need to really support this and blah, blah, blah. So when the council meeting came, he immediately got on his feet in a great big speech about why we should be doing this, that, and the next thing. And I didn't even have to say anything. He did it all for me. So he was very useful. Yeah, look, I would like to thank management and staff as well. I did that at the Audit and Finance Committee meeting, but there are a few extras here in the way of Kater and David and so on. And I would like to thank them. But especially Nadine, you know, she's been here for a few years. I see you growing into the job, and I feel we've sort of gone on a journey together. And I'm sure you're the first person to say that you're still learning about your job. I believe it has become really complex. There's always going to be challenges, of course. And of course, there are some great challenges, and I raised the issue earlier, you know, with financial things, affordability and all the rest of it. Well, you know, we're going to be challenged in the future. We're trying to roll out big infrastructure programs still. We've got no idea exactly how we're going to fund the Olympic pool complex, and it's almost an all or nothing sort of project where you can't do it really in stages because you actually have to commit to the whole thing. So yeah, that is a real challenge. And again, I look at that climate change thing. I've become increasingly worried about it. And Councillor Dunn, Amber, when you raised that issue, I was almost going to put a paper to this last meeting. I thought, no, that's not fair. That's stupid to put a paper to the council where I think that, I know it's not a requirement under the Local Government Act, but I had the concept of thinking every time we have a thing on the agenda, how we've got to consider cultural, social, financial, those considerations. Well, I would have liked to have added climate change considerations into those things as well. So that makes you think that everything that you do, is there a climate change thing that's affected there? Anyway, I didn't do that. I'm telling you about it now. It may become a requirement in the future. Okay, so I've probably spoken enough. I thank you, colleagues. It's been enjoyable. I found it very stimulating. But I, like Graham, have found that over this last year, I've found an overwhelming sense of I've got to move on. And even though I said, yeah, I will move out to being put out into pasture, but anyone that knows me knows that's a joke, because there's no way I'm going to be like that. I want a new challenge, and that's exactly why I've decided to retire, because I need a new challenge. So thank you, everyone.
So if there's some people that want to say a few words, now's your time, and keep it short. But if anyone wants to say something, now's your time. Malcolm.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I would just like to say that since the period of time I've been on here, and you have your down days and you have your up days, and there's always been a very supportive councillor to me. He obviously saw when I needed help, and that was no less than Graham, and he's been a real special friend to me, and totally and utterly supportive. And with both Graham and Brian, you know, they talk about getting rid of the old farts, but with the old farts goes away a lot of knowledge as well. And it's always good to have a really good balance of new ones and the older ones that are around. So remember, no, I won't ramble on, but Graham, I just want to personally thank you for your support, the way you support us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Malcolm. Meredith.
Thank you, Midge. I actually have purchased for you, Graham, some chocolate. Because, you know, you said today you don't want to leave grumpy, so I'm sweetening you up. But the mandarins, Kerry, sorry about it. My husband didn't read the packaging. Sent him to get it. But I just want to say to you that, yeah, we haven't always agreed on certain things, and that's democracy. But certainly I appreciate the experience, the knowledge, the wealth of it that you do carry, always will. Raised to respect my elders. So in this space and time, we may have disagreed about a few things, but always listened, always was interested in what you brought to the table based on, as said, years of experience. So I just want to say thank you from me and from constituents that perhaps didn't always understand the frustrations you had with set infrastructure changes, etc. But you certainly spoke up and certainly in the regional transport space, I've appreciated your input there. I still don't think we needed that bridge. But anyway, this job is for you, building a bridge. To Brian Wilson, I bought this game to give to you because I gave Balderdash to Craig Wald. So I was thinking about what could I give Brian. Brian is, to me, has always been someone that doesn't commit fraud. Okay, so the game's about fraud. He's a straight shooter. He has common sense. And one of the memories for me with Brian is he thanked me once when I was able to articulate to him something we perhaps didn't agree on, and he thanked me for getting him to look at it from another perspective. And I really respected you that day for that, because there are times when we do often see things from a different perspective, and when one of your fellow councillors who's been around the table 18 years says that, it means a lot. So this is a game you can take with you on your journeys. It's called Imponderables. And I know that you'll ponder on many a thing in the space you're moving into, but thank you so much for being you.
Thank you.
I've got a scarf for Karen Bashan here.
Anyone else wants to say? Pat, and then Andy, and then Josh, and then Larry.
Yes, I'd just like to advise to thank both Graham and Brian, because along with half a dozen other people, we all came on council at the same time. So we've seen 3 chief executives and a whole pile of other people around the table. And it was an interesting show, providing our role as a council. And I just thank you for both of you, your friendship and the work that we've all done together. Thanks very much. Enjoy your new challenges, because I know you'll both have new challenges.
Thank you, Pat.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, it's been great working with both of you. I believe that when we form a council table, we all come up with different levels of expertise. And the success of the council is allocating the expertise for its role. And I think both chair positions and both Karen have suited their expertise very, very well. And I think both of those committees have really been advantage of the positions that have been put there. Yeah, it's just kind of cool looking back to see who has been around here. How councils work the table and have been so supportive all the way through. And then from there, it comes into a relationship with get to understand each other, get to work out how to work with each other. And that's been the strength of our council all the way through. So thank you for this year.
Tēnā korua, mā pango mā whiro kauti ai te mahi. So by the black and by the red, the work will be kind of completed. It's a Te Ao Māori saying in regards to weaving. He had black and red threads that would be woven together in order to be able to create korowai. And that's often how I feel about the council discussions that are around the table. I really do want to pay homage to yourself, Brian, and to you, Graham. Probably externally to this room, people outside here don't realise maybe how strong the respect is and how strong the bonds are around this table, despite the very differing views and very differing lifestyles and upbringings. So I just really wanted to speak to that even though externally to a lot of people, we do have a very diverse range of people around our council table. We have, men, women, varying ages, varying demographics of our community. One of the things that I really wanted to let the public know, or really wanted to speak to in this room, even if it's not the public that's inside this room, is that there's still a really strong bond and collegial respect around this table, and I absolutely feel that in regards to yourself, Councillor Thompson, and yourself, Councillor Wilson. So thank you very much for your contribution to this table, your contribution to this region, but even personally your guys' own contribution to how I've grown as a councillor. So thank you very much.
Oh, Larry.
Yeah, right. Well, we have had Meng, who just left, who's been here since 2001, 18 years, and now Brian and Graham leaving after 18 years of service. And yeah, that's a huge chunk of experience. That is a really huge chunk of experience and institutional knowledge for this organisation. And yeah, me personally, I was actually here with some of those councillors, with Councillor Hikawai, and a few of the other ones prior to 2001 for a term. And yeah, so I can laugh at how the whole process was then and how it's moved now. And you know, thank goodness for progression. But you know, for both of you guys, it's been fantastic to be working with you, and your knowledge and your experience. You know, it's all filtered down to all of us actually, and all the decision making that we've made over the last 6 years in particular. So yeah, thank you so much for the input, and thank you for teaching us all some of your knowledge and some of the different experiences that you brought to the table, and to ultimately make the decisions that we've done. So fantastic. Thank you.
Uncle Phil? Oh, okay, no, you don't have to. You put your hand up.
Acknowledge.
No, I've woken the beer.
Acknowledge Graham for the work he's done in terms of assets and infrastructure, the roading. I know he's given both Davids an extremely hard time to try and get satisfaction for us. So thank you for that effort. I ring Graham quite regularly and we talk about mainly roading. But Brian, I have to say, in all the councils that I've been part of, in terms of audit and finance, you've been a real pillar. Conservative by nature and a lot of common sense at the table. We haven't always agreed, but staunch in what you've done and certainly, as you said earlier, valued the input of staff, valued the input of different opinions around the table, but when a decision was made, in most occasions, it was the right decision. I wish you well going forward in your new challenge. Graham, going home to the farm. I gave a lot of thought to that when Ming told me that he was going to restand, but that's all history now. You know where he is. To both of you, best of luck for the future.
Thank you, everyone, for those
Right.
kind comments.
Thank you. Anyone else? Otherwise, I'll ask Nadine to finish for us. Thank you.
So just here before we go into public budget and get on with the rest of the day, I just thought I'd also, and I have said thank you to you both before, but I'd like to reiterate our thanks on behalf of staff and for the work that you've put in around the committee to help it flow really well, respectful conversations that have been had with staff. And also personally for the support over the years, and as Brian said, I've been here like 10 years, and so it has been a bit of a journey with yourselves and some of the other councillors around the table, and things do change when people step down in those positions and new people come into the council role. So I've learned a lot about how you work, and also developed in this role as well, which you have both contributed to. So I just also want to thank the rest of council as well on behalf of staff, and wish you all well wherever things land in the future. And you know, I think just in the last couple of years, trust has been, I've had to earn that, and I feel that we've got there, and I want to thank you all for putting your trust in myself and my great team of staff, as we've made heaps of changes, and you've kind of backed us through that process too. So yeah, wish you all well, and all the best, and for whatever may come.
Thank you for that. Thank you, everyone. So we'll have a lovely lunch in half an hour. We're a little bit in front of our agenda, but what we will do is go into public excluded. What's that? I can't hear what you're saying. No, I called people earlier, so we'll do public excluded now. Thank you. So I thank the media. Thank you guys for listening to us. Be kind, and I move that we go into public excluded, seconded by Councillor Bedett. All in favour? Contrary, carried. So we'll just have a 1 minute break, and then we'll move into our public excluded agenda. Yeah, that's what I organised. Yeah.